Evan,
Hey man, how you
hey,
doing?
well, good. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Good. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, sorry about I was going to say confusion. Sorry about my irresponsibility and my lack of professionalism.
It is all good, man.
Can't believe I
That's
did
fun.
that. Yeah, I never do podcasts on Sunday. I don't have a problem with it. It's just always Thursday. So I thought, oh, yeah, I'll remember it's Sunday this time. And yeah, sure enough, I didn't remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Creature of habit.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I mean, I can't remember when I discovered you. It was probably a couple years ago on Instagram. And first of all, before you tell me about yourself, I got to tell you, your stuff is incredible. And that's why I invited you on the show. Anyone I invite on the show, I think their
Thank you.
stuff's incredible, but it really is. And I was drawing today in my sketchbook. I actually just interviewed Michael Grimaldi. Are you familiar with him?
Very much. Yeah.
Oh, freak, man, that dude's good, huh? But
Yeah, he's fantastic.
he's fantastic. Yeah. So I just interviewed him and he talked about sketchbooks. And so I'm drawing in my sketchbook today and I'm trying to channel people like him and you and other great draftsmen. And every time I'm just like, man, there's some people, and you're one of them, that just has like a very unique hand. It just your drawings are just somehow all your own, and that's what I like about them. You could pick yours out of a
Thank
crowd
you.
anytime. But I want to, before you tell me about yourself, I want to show people what your work looks like first, and that way, because we might not get to it for a little while. That way, if people
Sure.
are anxious to kind of know who Evan is right off the bat, here is your Instagram page, and
Yeah.
I'll just skim through it a little bit. So, I will ask you before we get into the details: do you paint? I don't see a lot of painting on here. Oh, here's a painting, right? No.
I do paint. I've been teaching painting now for about 12 years, and my personal paintings take me forever in the studio just because it's like you can work and rework in the texture, the buildup, the layering, like all the color. Like that's the stuff
Yeah.
I really love.
Right.
My two painting heroes are Antonio Lopez Garcia and Odd Nerdrum,
Yeah.
and they're both known to take forever, and I think
Yeah.
that rubbed off on me. But yeah, yeah, it's a blast.
That's yeah. Okay. Well, I'd like to see some of your paintings too at some point, but
Yeah,
yeah, we'll talk about that. So, yeah, let me hear a little bit about your life. So, when did you get interested in painting and drawing?
yeah. I mean, I'm probably like everybody else, right? There seems to be most of us were doing this since we were kids, just compulsively.
Yeah.
And then I teach all the time, and I teach ages ranging from high school students all the way up to like people who are on their third big thing, right? So they're like in their 80s. And most of us have been drawing since we were kids,
Hmm.
and we fell in love with it. It's very rare, I think, that you find someone who decides to switch careers and try something out of the blue like visual art, you know?
You mean someone
Um,
who never showed any interest and then all of a sudden does?
at all.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
because a lot
they're
of
so
people you teach probably are given a crack at this late in life, but that's not what you're talking about.
right,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, I'm probably like everybody else that's gonna watch or listen, where we've all just been like drawing on our homework in the corners, drawing, when we
That
were
was
young
me.
on
Yep.
things we should have been, and
Mm.
yeah, dude,
Yeah,
all that kind
on the
of stuff.
brown paper bag book covers. I don't know if that's your
Oh
generation,
my
but
god, that was one of my favorite things. I used to draw on everybody else's book covers, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And so I would say that I've been playing with drawing since I could hold stuff, but when I got serious, like really serious, the first like wave of that came when I went to college. So that would have been around 2005. I
Okay.
went and I got a degree in illustration from the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design.
Okay.
And my roommate at the time was a sketchbook junkie. Like he always had his sketchbook. He put a ton of work into it. He was just a party of a person, and we hung out every day and just drew all day long. It was fantastic.
That's gold. You
Um,
scored.
it was remarkable, and the more that I'm with students, the more I teach, the more I start to realize that's so rare. You know,
Mhm.
it's just so rare. So yeah, I was very very lucky. And then my first mentor, Jeff Geib, who taught at PCAD, was also really into sketchbooks and drawing and very generous. And so I worked with him for a long time, and he kind of kept it going where we were really fascinated with observational drawing and all the little strategies that can come with that. And I never really knew what I wanted out of my work when I was in undergrad. I was just excited about art. And it wasn't until I was in the life room drawing from the models where I started to learn that there's such a thing called drawing strategies, and there's different techniques for nailing down the anatomy and the light and the gesture and the staging and dealing with space. And once that kind of hit me, and I saw all the amazing art that was out there that I had no idea was still being made, I just jumped on that and I said, well, this seems to be my thing right now. Maybe it'll change later, but I'm going to collect every academic drawing thing that I can find, and we'll just kind of see where this goes. And so that second wave of influence, that second wave of excitement about academic art when it comes to the figure, and realism's not really the right word, illusionism maybe, right? I jumped on that, and
What do you
that took
see
me
as the
into grad.
difference? What is it that makes illusionism different than realism?
Yeah, sure. Realism's a time in art. That's a period
Oh,
of art, right?
so you're being
Um,
literal, the literal movement of realism.
yeah, yeah. And this idea that realism sort of has that burden of documenting reality and showing the different points of view of people and things like that, where I'm sometimes I just want to make shapes and form, you know,
Mhm.
just kind of playing with that. And that took me to the New York Academy of Art for my master's, which is actually where I met Michael. He actually taught the first class I ever attended at the academy,
Really?
um, which was a blast because he was one of the people who got me excited when it came to academic drafting.
Hmm.
Do you know the Juliet Aristides book, Classical
I
Drawing?
have all of her books. Yeah. I
Juliet?
gotta get her on here too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the first one with the Proudhon, right?
Mhm.
And that book, I found that in Barnes and Noble, and it like blew my brain because I had no idea that anyone could draw like that. I had no idea anyone was working like that. And here was an entire
So this
book
was around
filled with
'05, we're talking? Around '05?
yeah, yeah.
So
I
where
think
was
her
the
book
internet
came
in
out
'05?
in,
Where were we
what
at?
was that?
What was the internet doing in '05? I mean, what was your exposure to the world, in other words?
Oh yeah. What was it doing?
Because if
Not
you
too
didn't know
much.
all this, there must not have Instagram must have been non-existent or in
No.
its infancy. Okay.
I think it was MySpace. And
Really? Man,
oh,
that much
all
time's gone
right.
by?
So with I know, isn't that crazy? With so you had Carl on here, Carl Dobsky,
Yeah.
and so I was on Massive Black's conceptart.org forums.
Oh, you were?
And so that's where I was in 2005 to 2009, seeing everyone's
So
self-portrait every day
yeah.
and
So
all
realism
that
to
amazing.
you in your perception of realism or illusionism, as you put it, was more
Yeah.
connected to the commercial arts until later, and you started realizing, oh man, there's something to this figurative fine art thing.
Yeah, because, in if you weren't in a major city, And if you weren't in the one or two galleries in those major cities, you weren't seeing
Yeah, it's how it
figurative
was for me
painting.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it just wasn't there. Um, and I mean, that's the history of illustration too, right? You get the Brandywine River School of
Mhm.
artists, you know,
Mhm.
MC Wyeth Pyle, all of them, kind of keeping up the grand figurative painting arc.
Right.
And and of course, I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and so I'm traveling to the Brandywine River region, going to the museum, looking at all these amazing artworks, and trying to learn how to paint like NC Wyeth. And then I found Andrew Wyeth somehow on my own through that, and like he's one of my biggest fascinations now.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think anyone can get to the soul of a place like he can, and it's just astounding what he's capable of and what he leaves out and how he attacks it. And so there's so much depth there. And so once you start thinking you have it figured out, there are these artists from the recent past that just open all these doors up.
Mhm.
And in a very real way, that's what the Aristides book, that first one, really did for me, because I learned who Michael was, I learned who Dan Thompson was, who Stephen Assail was, who Juliet was. Her drawings are so phenomenal in how she edits.
Mhm.
Um, and so all these people have had such a profound impact on me. And then I got to go to the New York Academy of Art in 2010, and I studied with them. Most of the people that I had been looking up to, turns out that they teach there or they teach workshops there. And so
Mhm.
I got to meet them, work with them, and all of a sudden I kind of realized, oh, we're all just people who love art. We love drawing, we love the figure, and I can do this too. And so that was really great. Yeah. So that's
Wow.
probably the timeline. So yeah, like 2010, 2012, I was really sold on the path that I'm on now. Yeah.
Hmm. Tell us more about that path you're on now. What are you doing with your time now?
Well, it was around then I started thinking about the game of observational drawing and painting and sculpting,
Mhm.
and the moves that you could make. And I started to collect techniques and different ways of thinking about the modality of observational work, and how important it was to be with your subject, you know, for me. And the idea of like what's an artifact of the process and what does it mean to actually be there in the same space. Like it's not just plein air work where you're with your subject, right? And so that was a really profound thing for me. And I started looking at you and you glow and thinking a lot about Garcia, and I kind of landed on the classroom. To me, seems to be the arena that keeps challenging me, and I don't get complacent. And that to me is really thrilling. And so I kind of just decided to stay there. Um, so I do a lot of work that I would think is kind of the staged academic still life or anatomical study and figurative work. But it's definitely rooted in what I would call formalist thinking. I'm more interested in the nuts and bolts of the visual and the technical creation of the artwork than necessarily any symbolism or any outright narrative, you know?
Mhm.
And so where that's landed me is in the classroom teaching, which I've been doing now for 14 years or so.
Wow.
Um, Teaching
Where?
online,
Okay.
teaching at every level. Lot of online teaching now, but I'm also teaching at the two places where I graduated from, which is weird in the academic world, but not necessarily in like the atelier world, right?
Right.
Um, so I teach at the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design, which is a great undergraduate school. I teach in the illustration program and the fine art program, the animation and game art program. It's a blast.
Wow.
And then
That's
I teach
diverse.
the I know, it's so much fun. And then I teach at the New York Academy of Art, in their certificate program and in their MFA program. I also teach public Saturday classes there too. So
Really? I didn't know
very
you
busy,
taught there.
very busy. Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah, it's a
great.
blast.
So
Yeah,
you're
love it.
colleagues then with Stephen Assail at this point?
Yeah, 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 I am. Which is a blast because he was one of the people who helped cement for me that I can really teach. I
Mhm.
assisted him at the academy after I graduated. And so he would come in and blow everybody's mind because he's
Seriously.
phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have yet to meet anyone else that can move paint like he can. It's just on
Yes.
another level.
Yeah, speaking of illusionism,
Oh,
I mean, he's a magician.
whoa. It is
Yeah.
mind blowing what he can do in very little time.
I know. I know. I've watched him paint
Oh,
before and it's seriously it's like
it's life changing.
it's like it's like you're watching a tornado and thinking this is not going to be pretty. I mean, paint's flying everywhere and the next thing you know the tornado lifts off and there's this it leaves behind this complete jewel of a building or architecture
Yeah,
or something and instead of tearing things apart it just created this amazing beautiful thing and it's just wild
that's
to watch.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. Yeah, there's a whole genre of art in my mind that no one gets to see, which is the performative painters.
Mhm.
Steven's one of them. When he's painting, that's an amazing thing to watch. The
Yeah.
way he flicks the brush, the way he's setting himself up and layering strategically. Vincent Desiderio is another one that I
Really? I
always
didn't know
love
that.
watching.
He's also
Well,
very
so
performative?
he works indirectly in such an amazing process when he teaches his workshops, and there's a bluntness to it but a careful consideration at the same time, and he arrives at this gorgeous finish out of nowhere. um as far as his technique goes, it's really fantastic.
I need to get him on here too.
um
Both of those guys I need to get on here. They're
yeah,
incredible.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah, really fantastic. The other painter that I would put in on that list, just while we're talking, is Odd Nerdrum. If you've never gotten to see him paint,
Yeah.
it is amazing.
Yeah, I gotta call.
Um,
I gotta tell you, Odd Nerdrum is, one of those guys I don't know what it is, but I've got this sort of, emotional block with Odd Nerdrum because when I was in school back in
really,
90 let me see, when was I in school? I guess when I was really serious about studying art, it was like 97-ish, 98. And the only thing we had was
sure.
Barnes& and Noble, and the only decent artists that I remember at Barnes& and Noble were David LaFell and Odd Nerdrum. There was nothing else. You know, there's a lot of, there are a lot
That's
of
a
pretty
pairing.
good there are a lot of pretty good artists doing like how to draw
Yeah.
figure books or how to draw the head, but like real fine
Nice.
art that were living artists, the only ones I remember really finding in Barnes& and Noble were those 2 artists. So for some reason, I have this block with him, like, I can't call him because he was the first great painter I was introduced to before I knew they
Yeah.
existed. Like, I didn't know fine artists existed, and I'm like, "There's this dude with an odd name, no pun intended, that is like"
Right.
actually, pun was intended,
Exactly.
that, that is just out of this world. So someday I'm gonna contact him. I need to do it, but
Yeah, you
it's one of those
absolutely
things I
should.
have a block. I'm like, "I can't call him." I'm gonna do it though.
Yeah, he's an amazing person. His whole family is so wonderful.
Did you
I
study
got
with
to
him
study
too?
with him. Yeah, yeah.
Really? You think he'd say
Um,
yes?
I studied with him. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
I gotta try it. Yeah, I know,
Maybe.
maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
If you could get his sons on here or anybody from that circle, that's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
But Odd is one of those people who when you see his work, it stays with you, and
Mm,
it's the physicality of it too. It's not just the content, it's not the design. I mean, it's those things because he's so great with it,
yeah.
but the physicality of his work, it made me want to build a painting. And I had never felt that. I had always been a draftsman. I love Rembrandt. I love all the classic painters. I love indirect painting, all of that stuff. But I drawing for me, there's a primacy of it that allows it to always feel accessible at any moment. And it's my primary means of expression for sure. I think that's
Mhm.
why Michael and I clicked
Yeah.
when I got to work with him. Um, and when I saw Nerdrum's painting, I saw the themes book, which is this giant, amazing book of his work, and it has these full blown, full page reproductions that are just perfect. And I stared at the reproductions for hours, and I thought, how can I do this? How can I make this happen? And he, yeah, he let me go to France and work with him, and
So what'd you do? Write him
it
a
was an amazing
letter?
time.
Send him an email? What'd you do?
I met him in Philly, when he came and did a workshop at PAFA, and then
Really?
I was his assistant, when he went to the academy the next weekend,
Yeah.
and they asked me to come out.
The
It
heck,
was it
man?
was fantastic.
You have painted with the best painters in the world.
Yeah.
You've had the
Yes, I have.
life, dude. I mean, it's
I
like
yeah, I'm very, very lucky.
it's like you basically in contemporary times you've painted with Rembrandt, Michelangelo, and Vermeer. I mean, it's like, are you freaking kidding me? Yeah, that's amazing.
I know, and the, luck just keeps going. My studio practice out here, is filled with phenomenal artists that don't have a big online presence and aren't the most known artists, but they're some of the greatest artists I've ever met. And
I need to get that list
so
from a
yeah,
list from you.
yeah, yeah, of course.
This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting.
And I'm out here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and one of the reasons I'm still out here instead of in New York or Jersey where I grew up is because of my studio practice. I'm very, very lucky to share it with such great people.
Studio
Yeah.
practice. Tell me about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, so I am very fortunate. I have a studio outside of my home,
Mhm.
that I share with other artists, and I get to travel to it and work with these incredible people, in this shared space.
Okay.
And that's not a small thing, you know.
So
And
you've created a
we
community there in Lancaster.
I I wish I could take credit for creating that. I joined someone in his effort to create one. My good friend David Stallings.
Mhm.
He has this beautiful studio space, and he opened it up to me, and he's allowed me to invite some people here and there. But it's through his generosity that has kind of kept me going, which is no small thing, you know.
Wow. And everyone
Um,
gets along great and inspires one another?
yeah, yeah, we're very careful, I think, about the ecosystem because we've been meeting once a week now or so, um, for about a decade to do life drawing every week,
Wow. You guys have been
and
together a long time.
it's fantastic. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely fantastic.
How many artists are there in the group?
I believe we're up to 5. Yeah, yeah,
Really?
5.
And so how
Yeah.
is the building split up? Is it do you have all have a separate room or are you kind of just occupying the same giant space or what?
He has this gorgeous space out behind his home, and he takes the, main floor, and he lets me kind of have most of the second floor, and I've sort of creeped my way into the third, you know? Um, but it's, like I said, he's very generous, and, we
Wow.
share the space, I think, with I think there's 3 or 4 of us that are in there at any given time. And then the other folks just kind of join us for the figure drawing. Yeah,
Right.
it's really wonderful. One of the most important things about maintaining a creative practice, and I know that you know this, right, is having a community that you can constantly talk to and share art with and try out ideas with and get that feedback.
Mhm.
Um, and it has to be a community that you trust or look up to. You know, it
Yeah.
can't just be like, oh, there's a local figure drawing group that meets once every 2 months, right? Like that's just people that are looking to draw. You know, like there's a difference there, right?
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah, it's really
tricky
cool.
though. You're probably a much more laid back person than I am. But it's tricky though because I've been in these group studio settings and one artist whose personality doesn't fit in can throw off the whole energy in the place, you know? And it's not about fitting in is probably the wrong word, but one personality that just sort of breaks the connection.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the live and let live like mentality, and I want to surround myself with people who are obsessively dedicated to what they do.
Mhm.
And I find that when an artist or any creative person, right, is so dedicated to what they do and they love what they do so much, there's almost no room for, studio politics or any anything like
Yeah, I
that,
think you're
because
right.
it's all like we support everyone's effort because we're all like drowning in our obsessions in such a profound way.
Yeah.
Um, we've been really lucky that we're all a little older. I think I'm the youngest one of that crew, and yeah, it's really great. So we've all met those kind of people, right?
Mhm.
You know, and we're very conscious not to inhibit someone else's time. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, and you did it the right
Yeah.
way because your friend vetted you, being his friend, right? And then you've brought in other people. So it's not like you're just putting out an ad and saying studio space available and just taking whatever shows up as a studio mate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I would ever do. Yeah.
It could not be pretty.
I would never do any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, having an art practice is it's having a ritual,
Yeah.
like you wouldn't want just anybody to be a part of your space and your ritual, when it comes to that rare time that we get to make art.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm
yeah,
laughing because I'm an analogy guy. I don't know why, but I think in metaphors and analogies and I'm imagining
yeah, it's
myself
great.
on a massage table and my massage therapist is there. And then all of a sudden someone comes in and cranks like AC/DC or something and just completely ruins the mood. And that's what it's like when
Yeah,
and you just it's not that it's a bad band or anything. It's like it's just like, you know what? I need to perfect concentration right here.
yeah,
And if you throw in, if you throw in the wrong elements, it can throw everything off. And so if you go into one of those studio spaces where everyone's just renting from the landlord and you never know what you're going to get,
right,
it's just, yeah, it's
right.
risky. It's risky because the AC/DC could be right
Yeah,
next door, when you're trying to concentrate.
you have to protect that state of flow,
Yeah.
you know, and anything you can do to keep yourself in that state where you might find yourself just, oh, I have 10 minutes, let me go to the studio, just set some stuff out for later, and then all of a sudden it's 7 hours later, you forgot to eat, it's dark out, but you're halfway through a drawing, like that's the best case every time,
Yeah.
right? And anyone that removes that magic of time slippage from you, or anything that takes that time from you, you have to really challenge that. And that gets tougher as you get out of school, because when you're a student, you can justify it financially. You can say, I'm paying a lot of money to be in school. I'm in the role of being a student. This is my job right now. I'm doing my college work, right? Um, but when you have a family, or you have responsibilities to your business, or you have to travel to teach, or you have to protect that time,
Yeah.
because it's
Not
rare.
just the time, but the
It's
flow, the ability to have the flow,
Yeah,
right?
because if you're there and you have that time, but you can't get it going because there's distractions, or you're stressed, or
Mm-hmm.
the model can't make it right now, or
Mm-hmm.
and it's just life stuff. It's not like a malicious thing.
No, of course not.
It's just you have to find a way in.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend for a long time who would set himself up by playing a game of chess against himself.
How does
He
that
would keep
work?
two different chess.
Really?
He would have two different chess boards, yeah, and he would make moves in anticipation of the next time he would show up. I've never seen someone else do that. And he would also do these chess games where he would say, like, how many moves do I have to go through with the knight to get it to a certain space? And I found that so fascinating because it took him out of whatever was happening, got him focused on a strategy or a playful thing. And then he found that his mind would wander from the game because he's not even really a good chess player. And so his mind would wander and he would go, all right, it's time to paint, you know? And so he had that ritual of getting in there, playing for a little bit, and then he would just be in that right mental
How
space.
does one
And
discover
I
something like that?
I have no idea. I think it was an inherited thing.
That's
Because most
wild.
of us just go grab coffee, right?
Yeah. Or I've heard of people reading for an hour or something before they start
Yeah,
painting, or doing yoga or exercising. But playing a game of chess with yourself when you're not even a good chess player? Like, I could see it if he
it's
was a
hilarious,
great chess player and it was
hilarious.
part of his culture and he grew up playing chess. But when you said he's
Yeah,
not even a
no,
great chess player, I'm like, how, well, then how did he know this would
he
work? That's amazing.
he just likes it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Good for him. I need to
Yeah,
discover
it's
something
really
like that.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great.
yeah, those rituals that we have that kind of get us going, right?
Yeah.
Um, and if you're lucky enough to keep the same working space for a lengthy period of time, you'll walk in, and as long as everything is in the same space, as long as the smell is the same, the light is the same, like your brain just goes, we know what to do here,
Yeah.
you know and so
Yeah.
you can just work. But having that consistent space that you do not live in, it should not
Yeah.
be the space that you have to do your taxes in, right?
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I can't believe you're saying this right now. I got to show you something. Okay? Cuz I don't know if you follow my work or any of my websites or any of my Instagram accounts,
Oh yeah, of course.
but I've got an Instagram account called HEIN Studio where I put some of my trinkets and inventions and things I make that aren't paintings. And
I love it.
it's all in my studio. So my studio is packed full of tools. I call it Santa's workshop. It's like there's nothing you can't build here. There's very few tools I
Yes.
don't have because I've been collecting my whole life. Most people buy clothes and cars, and if I with my extra money, it's almost always tools, you know? And my
Yeah,
whole
that's
wardrobe is
fantastic.
cheap t-shirts. So, um
Yeah.
but the problem with it is, it's funny you said that about your accounting stuff in the same place as your painting stuff, is it's a distraction. It's bad.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh my
Oh yeah.
gosh, it's bad. So I did this and I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I'm going to show you what I did. And I can't even believe how well it worked. This is just recently that I did
Cool.
this. So I'm going to pull up my Photoshop here real quick and show you what I'm talking about. Here is my studio is shaped kind of like this. Whoops. It's 100-foot long building
Uh-huh.
and 22 feet long. So this is terrible. My straight lines are terrible. I actually know how to draw a little bit, I promise. So the classroom is right here, and there's two double doors. And then my painting studio is all of this space in here. And then there's a door in here
Beautiful.
into my shop where, table saw, all kinds of welding equipment, woodworking equipment. And then what happened was, so, all right, I'm going to draw an easel right here. So this used to be my painting studio. I kid you not. When I moved in, it was a bench, an easel, and a cart. That's the way it started when I moved in. And then some
I
cabinets
love
here
it.
and there. Yeah. Huge
Yeah, yeah.
studio. This was 50 feet by 25 feet. So what is that square footage? That's big. It's like 1,200
It's
square feet or
healthy.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
great.
just that room. And then, so what happened was I started collecting more and more and more tools. And this is about the size of a 2-car garage. But now I've got
Yep.
tables out here. I've got all kinds of metalworking equipment and stuff over here. I've got metal brake over here. I've got literally got a forge over here and an anvil in the middle of
Oh,
my
wow.
painting area. And then I've got sewing machines across here and a paint booth
Yeah,
here. So when I'm standing here trying to paint, I'm just like gazing over at all this stuff all the time. So what I did was, um, and I kind of did it on accident just because I'm running out of room. I didn't think it would affect my concentration that much. I just needed to condense. So
sure.
I have this huge canvas that I built, this huge, like, it's this custom easel that's 13 feet wide by 10 feet tall. So it's not
Yeah,
quite to the ceiling, but it basically goes to the ceiling. It completely hides everything behind it. So it goes to about here. And I put it there, and then I put all
that's
my other
perfect.
tools behind it. So all the woodworking tools are
Yeah,
behind it like this. All the tables, the sewing machines are now over here and everything. And now I look here to paint. This isn't here anymore. And it's crazy the difference it's made because just by not being
yeah.
able to see all of this, my concentration has improved dramatically. It's like night and day. And it's the same
Yeah,
number of
that's
steps
huge.
to my sewing machines as it was when they were here. But just because I
Sure.
can't see them, it's crazy the difference it makes to have
Yeah.
that space that's separate so you're not distracted by those things.
What's beautiful about that too, how you have that set up is you could still walk back into that classroom space and you have that long view.
Oh,
You
I
know what I
know.
mean?
It's totally true. I'm glad you
So
noticed that. Yep. I back
yeah,
way up
so
into their classroom sometimes.
yep.
Yeah.
The thing about having a collection, and I collect all sorts of things. It's one of the things I've realized about myself lately is I'm a collector.
Mhm.
Maybe more than anything else. I collect books, coins, pencils,
Yeah, I kind of
art,
am too. Yeah.
plaster casts, all of these things. I just compulsively am like, it's beautiful. I want it. Let's get it near me. And it all ends up in the studio. And for me, since it's a shared space, you hope it's useful to other people. You hope it's beautiful so they don't get mad, right? Um, but what can end up happening is we get so captivated by these things that we love and things that excite us into action, right? Like tools are perfect. Like I collect pencils, and so I have a whole pencil thing set up in my studio. And when I see that, I'm like, I'm sketching with watercolor right now, but I'm about to go draw with some old pencils because that looks so much more fun. Or I have to catalog that, organize this,
Oh my gosh,
and then
seriously.
I get nothing done, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's one thing. So the out of sight preserving your flow state thing is so critical, and I love that you did that with your space. The other thing that can happen, which is equally detrimental, is you can become blind to it, right? Is you walk in and you never touch them, you never even see them, you just have less and less room, and you don't use them as much because you're focused on other things. So by
Oh.
separating your space, I imagine that you're making better use of both sides of it now.
Yeah. Well, I have noticed it depends on how you define better use. I mean, they're used in the same way, but I think that my experience is more fulfilling because when I'm on the left side of the canvas or in this side of the
Yeah.
canvas over here, I'm a craftsman, and when I'm over here, I'm a painter. And so it's nice to
Oh, very
compartmentalize
interesting.
myself. So I'm not constantly looking over here feeling guilty, and I'm not constantly looking over here feeling distracted. So on both
Yeah.
places, I feel better here and better here. It's bizarre. So in that sense, yeah, you're right. I think I am probably
Yeah.
more productive in that way. So that's
I
wild.
would assume so. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
It's how we curate our space and how we set ourselves up for success is such a big deal.
Yeah.
And it can be as simple as just having something break up that room so you're using the space in a very different way. That's what I did when I was in college because I my studio was in my apartment bedroom, right? So I had my
Mhm.
bed and I had my dresser, I had the TV on my dresser, and I arranged it so the TV on the dresser acted as a barrier.
Yeah.
And then I had my little, table easel and stuff that I had set up too, and I found that to be very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And here's
that's great.
another option for those who are listening. If you're truly creative, then I think it's important that you consider this design um option. This is
Got Francis
Francis
Bacon.
Bacon's
Yeah.
like
Oh,
what the
I know.
crap, man? How does anyone function like that?
Well,
I don't
what's
get
funny
it.
is
And this
he
isn't a
probably
critique.
knew where everything was.
I know, that's how my dad was. We had a shop. My dad had a
Yeah,
shop growing up. My dad is like this, but in his shop. And I am a total neat freak. Everything has to be in its place. Everything it has to be organized or I can't
yeah,
focus. And I'd go in, I remember I'd go into his shop after school because I used it too. That was one of the benefits of growing up with with a dad like that is you had all these tools around all the time. And I would use it too. And I
yeah,
remember once I was around 12 years old. This happened all the time, but for some reason I remember this one particular time where I was
sure.
about 12 years old and I went and cleaned my dad's shop. And what that means is that
Oh,
I picked up everything and I put them and I organized and built shelves and I took like baby bottles and screwed them to this bottom of the shelves and put all the nuts and bolts in them and like totally organized. I'm just a 12-year-old kid. It was
he must have been
beautiful.
pissed.
Oh my gosh, you nailed it. It was
Yeah,
beautiful though. It looked pristine.
yeah.
And he
That's
goes,
because
but
you.
my dad is such a
Oh,
good man. This is what he did. He's such a good man. I love
I
my
love
dad.
it. Yeah,
I knew he wasn't appreciative because I could tell because he's not, it was hard to hide his actual feelings. But he's like,
right.
well, I showed him and I was so excited. He goes, I remember exactly what he said, but I remember him trying to sound appreciative, right? This is a long time ago. I'm
Sure.
50 now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then I overheard him talking to my mom and he was pissed. Like, why
Yep,
does he do this to my shop? I knew where everything was. I'm more comfortable in
yep.
the mess. That's the way I want it to be. Why does he keep doing this? Because it's not the first time. And
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
just had to have it that way. And so I'm not making fun of Francis Bacon, but
No,
I'm
no,
kind of
no.
actually making the point that for some people, this is the flow state. It's
Yeah,
crazy to me, but you got to find that flow state and roll with it, right?
everybody has their own connections,
Mhm.
and for Francis Bacon, I think you have to consider the mess, the crowded sense of space, the absence of a crowded space in his work, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
pattern, the color, the line, like there's a connection there. And what we have near us finds its way into our work, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so for him, it just seemed to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, I love that story that you just shared, and the takeaway for me is you were giving something that you valued back to your father,
Mhm.
and inadvertently made the space yours, right?
That is very insightful. Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought I was being charitable, but I was actually being selfish.
and it's with the best intentions, and it's we all use our own creative spaces so differently, and none of us have the same creative practice, you know um and so something out of charity can turn into that something like that real fast. I get that way when anybody cleans up my studio area,
Are you
where
a
I'm like,
pig
you
or are
should
you
have just
neat?
asked.
Or are you somewhere in the middle?
Oh, I strive to be neater.
Oh, you're not. You're
um
not Francis Bacon sloppy, are you?
Not that sloppy. Not that sloppy.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
judge you, man. It's
I'm
okay.
I'm very guilty of the procrastination pile where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put this here for now, and then I'll organize it. And then like 3 months will go by, and I'm like, oh yeah, I should probably clean that.
You know what
Yeah,
though? And my wife is that way. I call she makes piles. I
yeah,
always say that you're a pile maker. You're a pile maker. And
yes,
I'm not a pile maker because everything has to be in its place. But I'm envious of
of
people
course.
like you because maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it's harder for people like me who are more on the OCD side to get into that flow state
Mm,
because it's really hard for me to focus unless everything is right. Everything around me has to be
yeah,
just right. Whereas my wife can just sit in the backyard with her feet up and enjoy the sound of the birds when everything is and when there's crap in the house, there's dog poop on the deck. Like I'm just like, don't
yeah.
you how can you relax? Like, don't you want to clean that up? Like I can't relax, you know?
Sure,
So it's
sure.
kind of a gift to have some balance, where you can procrastinate. Procrastination is not always bad because sometimes
No,
you
no,
got to
it's not.
do you
It's
got to
not.
prioritize your time.
Yeah, the procrastination side of life for me, coming to terms with the fact I am a procrastinator and coming to terms with, well, that means I have to be really good at what I do to pull it off, you know?
Yeah.
Because if I'm gonna wait and I have to cram all this stuff in to make something happen, I still have to make it happen if I'm gonna pay rent, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Are you
and
procrastinating with your
so
art too?
I procrastinate with everything.
Oh, you do?
Um, everything. One of the ways that I realized that I can hack my brain is if left to my own devices, I'm not sure I'd ever get anything done. But if I'm responsible for someone else's benefit or someone else's time, there isn't anything that I won't do to arrange my schedule for them, right? And
Oh,
so
I
by
know
keeping
that.
myself very busy teaching, I have a schedule that's set in stone where young artists depend on me, and I'm not going to let a young artist down, right? Um, so
Totally, totally relates to that. For
that
me, it's my family. I can't let them starve to death.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But yeah, having that external pressure keeps me on top of things, keeps me focused, keeps me looking at my schedule and planning. Without that, like there's maybe a month in the summer that I know I don't get as much done as I could, but it's okay because we need breaks too, right?
I
Yeah.
was listening to this sociologist who's fairly well known, and he said something to this effect. I'm definitely paraphrasing, but
Sure.
boys will never be men until they adopt some responsibility or until some responsibility is placed on them. And then they'll step up. And I think that's probably true. I mean, not for all men. I think some people, you can't generalize any people, men, women, whatever. You can't generalize. I get that. But anecdotally, I have seen it, which with even with myself. I remember before I went to college, my mom, well, I should say long after I went to college, my mom told me that before I went to college, she thought if I left home, I would die without her because I would never be able to do anything for myself.
Sure, sure.
And
Yeah,
I could see why she would think that because when I had
yeah.
her there to take care of me, I was more than happy to let her do it. And
Oh, of
but
course.
then when I had to do it, when I had responsibility, then I had to step up, you know. So you what
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing looking back at statements like that because we view them through the lens of our own life to see if they're true, right?
Right, of course.
And we look back on our lives and go, I was kind of a mess when I was a kid. I was a little silly. I was not the most responsible because that's the role of being a kid. You should be allowed to make mistakes. You should get in trouble. You should, have fun, be silly. Um, and but in all of our lives, there is a very clear moment where we need to sort of have that mental shift of responsibility.
Hmm.
And I think it happens not only in life in a very real manner, like the death of a parent or a grandparent, or someone needing help and you have to step up and really be there, right? Or just taking responsibility for doing your laundry when you're at college, right? But you have to take responsibility for your creative practice too, and you have
Right.
to make a decision about the path that you're going to follow. And one of the best ways to do that is to find a mentor, um, that you love their work and you trust them and their personality, because
Yep.
that kind of leap, that responsibility of a creative person, that leap, you can always undo, you can always restart, right? Any of us could change our thing and just form a band and play play music now, and that's our thing, right?
Right.
um when you're young, everything feels like, okay, I'm setting my identity in stone. What kind of art do I make? Who am I? What's my whole thing? And I think we latch on to very quick commitments, right? Where we go, well, I'm a realist artist and I'm an oil painter, like, but what does that mean? How does that, like, who are you within that bracket, right?
Right.
Um and it's not until years later that we sort of, if you keep with the responsibility of your creative practice, which is not an easy task, you need
Mm-mm.
support, right? Which is where the peer group comes in, the community comes in, the mentors come in, right? It's definitely not just us. And eventually you'll find something that clicks with you so naturally, it's just like breathing. And for you, I love the level of humanism in your work.
Thank you.
You're a very amazing technical painter, but there's a lot of technical painters out there. But the way that you're able to make the people that occupy your painted world, they feel like they have an inner life,
Thank you. I appreciate
and
that.
oh, it's astounding. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with your commitment to just being a good person in your own right, being mindful of how you set up everything, and really working with people for so long. Like, it finds its way into your work, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that that's fair?
I definitely try every day to be a good person, but I can be an a-hole. I
Me
have
too.
I have my moments. I have my moments, but I try every day to be a good person.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, the thing is, Joe Paquette said once, "Paint what you love," in the podcast I did with
Yeah,
him. I think that's really part of it too, is if you love the subject matter, it's gonna show. And, I love family. That's one of my,
hmm,
and I love God. And those are the 2 things I paint about, generally speaking. I paint other things
yeah,
too, but if you paint what you love, you're gonna be good. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be
yeah,
subject matter. It could be, I love color, right?
right.
I love
Absolutely.
I don't know, I love anatomy. I love structure. I mean, it doesn't have to be a spiritual thing
Yeah,
or a personal relationship, right? But that just so happens to be what it
exactly.
is for me. Yeah.
One of my things is I'm not a religious person in the traditional sense, but I'm religious about my art practice.
Right.
Like, I mean it when I say, like, to me it's a ritual, and
Yeah.
I mean it, and so I have a great deal of reverence for the model stage, a great deal of reverence for the life room at the schools that I get to teach in, and the practice of collaborating with a model is profound. Um, and I carry
Yeah.
that into my student. And one of the to dovetail with the quote that you brought up, Marshall Arisman, who was I think he was the MFA chair of illustration at SVA for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, Amazing illustrator, total wild card of a person. It seems. His advice to everybody starting out was draw what you know. Draw what you know, and you'll just crank it out. It'll just flow from you. It doesn't matter what you know, draw it because you know it on such a deep level that
Mm.
it can't help but be an insightful thing, right?
Hmm.
Something that most people couldn't bring to it.
I've been doing Jeff's online mentorship program for about a year now, and it is awesome. Everything is online, super streamlined. If you can be there, I mean, you have the ability to talk to him once a week and he can review your work and help you. If you can't be there, it's pre-recorded. You can go back and even re-watch things if you missed something during class or couldn't be there. So the online portion of it is almost better than real life because you can always go back to it, which is awesome. The demos are recorded. It's just like all available whenever you need it. And I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4, and my time is limited, and it's also very interrupted. And so to be able to go back has been clutch for me. And you get to work with Jeff Hein, who's awesome. He's tough. The assignments are simple, but difficult, and they're difficult to make us all better. And he's able to give us these assignments, coach us through it, help us stay excited to progress. And so it's just been a great experience. I am so grateful that he has been willing to take time away from his own art to offer all of us to have it. So if you're thinking about doing it, it's amazing.
To learn more about how you could have me as a personal mentor, check out the link to HEINatelier.com in the show notes or video description.
Which is
Hmm.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me. Recently, I spoke to a bunch of young women at a girls' camp, and
Oh, very cool.
a friend of mine asked me to do it, and they wanted me to talk about my art and my, you know, just my life and my whole story. And one thing led to another, and I procrastinated, and I didn't
Yep.
prepare anything at all, like literally nothing. But I thought, okay, I got 4 hour slot before this event. And it was like 6 o'clock
Mm,
at night. I'm like, I've got from 2 to 4 to prepare something,
yeah.
and then my whole day blew up. Next thing you know, it's 5:30, and I got to get in the car and go. And I didn't do
Yep.
anything to prepare. But I wasn't worried about it because when I got there, the woman who had asked me to do it, she's like, whoa, whoa, she said something to ask me what I'm going to talk about or whatever. And I was like, I don't know. I didn't prepare anything. But I said, but I'll be fine. Like, there's nothing I
Yeah.
know better than myself. Right. And then the whole
Right.
point of it was to
Yeah.
tell my story. Like, what do I have to prepare? And I think that's kind of how it is. Like, if it's something you're truly passionate about and familiar with, you're more likely to have success than you are trying to
Yeah. Yes.
crawl in the skin of another artist. Right. And it's just
Yeah.
not as likely to be successful.
Since we brought up quotes, my first mentor, Jeff Geib, he had been teaching for well over 20 something years by the time I started to teach. And I asked him, I said, hey, I'm just starting out. I feel like I'm pretty good at this thing. It feels like a calling. I think this is going to be the path that I take to pay my bills, and it's going to let me keep my own creative practice separate financially, so I don't have any pressure.
Mhm.
And he said, "Oh, that's great." And I said, "Well, help. Like, what advice do you have, man?" And he said, "Whatever you labor and prepare over, whatever script you work out, they will never remember it. Whatever you say off the cuff in between teaching, they will never forget."
Oh, dude, that's
And
heavy. That's
and it's incredibly true.
that is
It's been true
smart.
for the last like 12 years. It's absolutely there.
That
Yeah,
is a really I need to, write that down. That's a brilliant quote, and it's so true. You know?
it really is true.
Yeah, I noticed that, I'm sure with my students. Oh, now I feel terrible. Like, I'm sure I'm trying to think of all the stuff that they've seen me do or say that I probably shouldn't have, my practice, my
Oh
bad
yeah.
example. But it's like, yeah, man, it's practice what you preach. People are watching.
Yeah, and one of the best things about working with Nerdrum for the time that I did get with him,
Mm-hmm.
because I would wake up, and then I would go buy groceries for the day, and then I'd come back and I would just watch him paint for hours, and I'd ask him questions, and I would sketch and just take notes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wasn't there to make my work. I was there to learn about him and his practice and what he could offer and what he was willing to. And I was so happy when I realized, as incredible as he is, as generous as he is, and as like a shining light as he truly is, he's a guy. He's a person who loves painting. And I remember actually posing for one of his paintings. So I got the deer skin on. Like I was his
Can we see
stand-in
this painting? Did it make
for
it out
his
of his
body.
studio? Did it make it out
Oh
of his
yeah.
studio?
Yeah.
Oh, just his
Yeah.
body. It was a stand-in for his body. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a portrait out there or anything.
Oh, okay.
I think he did draw me once, but that's just a sketch.
Okay.
And but I was posing for him for for a self portrait, and he stopped and he goes, "All right, it's time for coffee. We should go get coffee." And it hit me like I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be getting to work with someone at this caliber, let alone someone who inspired me, who's this generous, but also that they take breaks like this too, and we're gonna go get coffee
Funny how
because
we glorify
we need a
people.
break. We just need a break for coffee. And yeah, it was such a fantastic moment that helped me just relax and know that, like, okay, this is a creative practice. We can all do it, you know.
Yeah. It's funny how the
Um
world works because there are probably people out there who are younger than you and less experienced than you that would have the same experience if they studied with you. Like, oh my gosh, Evan Kitson, he's human.
yeah, yeah. It's so funny. I With online teaching, because you do a really great online mentorship, right?
I do, yeah.
And you
Well,
have the same.
I do an online mentorship. I'm not agreeing with the great part, but thank you for that.
Okay.
I do. It's a
And
great, great online mentorship.
yeah, it's a perfect.
HeinAtelier.com.
Um, yeah, I was gonna say this is the perfect time to splice an ad, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Evan says, yeah. Um, but the thing with online teaching and how the pandemic really changed my entire career was it fast tracked all the technology, all the lights, all the cameras, the multiple screens I have, all the tech, all the software. And it also changed the performative element of teaching, like
Mhm.
more than ever before. Instead of speaking with someone, I am performing for someone, right?
Mhm.
And the art of the online teaching performance is something that I haven't seen anyone write about yet. And it would be very
Yeah.
helpful if someone would, because we all had to go through it, right? um I can't tell you how many lectures my oven has sat through, and um but my teaching assistant, Sarah, after I teach, because they're online helping me with muting people, answering tech questions privately, just a total saint. And when we wrap, everyone logs off, they stay on, and it's so funny because they laugh every time they see that veil drop, right?
Oh,
Where it's
your
like,
real
oh,
personality comes out?
yeah, just all right. I think that went pretty well. What do you think? Well, and
Time for a cup of
it's such a.
coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, let's get coffee. Let's DoorDash Taco Bell or something, right?
Mhm.
Um, it was just such a fascinating process of like getting to know someone like them for the past like 6 years of them being my TA.
You've been at it for
And
that
so
long
they've really.
online?
Well, I worked with Sarah when they were in the CFA program at the New York Academy of Art.
Mm.
So they were my student, and then they started becoming my TA on Saturdays for my in-person CE classes.
Mhm.
And when we moved online, I was like, I'm gonna need help if you're still fascinated.
Mhm.
Um, and we just haven't stopped. Yeah, it's great.
So are you teaching
I'm very,
online
very lucky.
through New York Academy or another school?
I was, but once we went back in person, I love their facilities. I love their plaster casts. The models we
Yeah.
have at that school are phenomenal, and the in-person crowd is so great that I made the decision to stop teaching online for any other school. I only teach online for myself, privately through my website, theopensketchbook.com.
Okay.
And what I do is I only teach in person CE. So my only public teaching that's in person is through them.
Okay.
So on Saturdays in New York, that's when I teach public classes.
So tell me about your
Yeah.
private online thing.
Yeah, I've been doing it since the pandemic, and we all had to learn the online teaching stuff. We all kind of crash landed into it. We were all using like PDFs at first, or like janky PowerPoints that were, just bear with me, please, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what started to happen was I realized community is the most important part of online teaching. And so I developed courses that prioritize the community, and we look at each other's work. I teach lessons, but the lessons are concept driven, maybe not so much a lesson that might be based in like tacit knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't tell how hard I'm pushing on my pencil, right? It's a video. And
Mm-hmm.
so that knowledge that cannot be transferred digitally just shouldn't be a part of it. But online is so great for concepts.
Well, give me
Like
an
it's
example.
it's
What?
perfect.
Give me an example of a concept you might teach or share.
Sure. We did a really intense dive on composition maybe last summer. And part of what we did was we picked master works that we love, and then we did master copies where we would change their shapes. And so I
Hmm.
said, all right, you can only draw this one using circular shapes or rounded shapes. This has to be triangular. This one has to be square, and change nothing else. And what you end up with is a lot of funky looking art, but you also learn that shape equates into feeling, right? You start feeling a certain way when it comes to these things. And then everyone would choose different artworks all throughout time. And so you had someone making a boxy girl with a pearl earring, and then you had someone else taking anime and making everything round and really fascinating instead of sharp. And it was such a profound leap into that idea of design and composition. And when you change one thing, you open up a whole new door of possibilities.
That
So
sounds
it doesn't
awesome.
really feel like the vandalism that it probably sounds like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was
Yeah.
really fun.
You'll have to email me after we're done here that website again, and we'll post it in the show notes.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds
I
great.
also set up something. So one of the things that I've noticed is there isn't really anything going on now, like when I was in school, because you had asked like what was the internet doing when you were in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had the conceptart.org forums, and that's not really in existence anymore in the same way. Like things have really shifted after the pandemic, things have really shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized so many things are not free. Everything is you have to pay, you have to pay, you have to pay. And when I was a college student, I was living on dollar cheeseburgers.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't have paid for anything. The pastel set that I bought for my class like bankrupted me. Um, and so I just released it today. I'm starting something called the Still Life Club, where it's free. Anybody can join, and I give a high quality reference plus a video demo every month. And I'm gonna encourage people to play with it, paint it, draw it, make a collage, do anything that you want with it in a creative way,
Hmm.
and then share it in our community. Just like here's something free. you know? Um,
That's really cool.
and as a yeah, it's something I'm just trying to start up. As a thank you for having me on, I put together a special version for your audience,
Oh, cool. Thanks,
where I
man.
give out like 7 extra free references from my studio. So I'll send you that link.
That would be great.
Uh, yeah,
That'd be
I just
great.
wanted to do something to say thanks for having me on. This is actually my first time on a podcast,
What?
and
No,
I
get
love
out
your
of town.
podcast. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you.
And
Thank
I listen to yours often, so I was like, all right, this is really cool. I got to make sure I don't show up completely empty-handed.
Well, that's
Yeah,
really cool of you. I'm sure that you'll probably pick up a bunch of students from it too, which is great. Because I mean,
that'd be fun.
I'm thinking about signing up. Like
That'd be great.
you
Yeah,
never
please.
stop learning, man. You never stop learning. So that's really
Right.
cool, and it's so different than what I'm doing, which is great to hear because you, frankly, you're inspiring me to, maybe rethink some of the things I'm doing. Because, like you said, it's in its infancy. It's
It really
it's hard to
is.
know
It
the right
really is.
way. It's hard. I mean, my
Well,
school, we've had a lot of success. Like they are growing crazy fast and it's mind blowing.
I
I
love it.
never thought
Yeah,
online could be so effective, but
it's
it could
amazing.
still be better, right? It could always be better.
Well, the one thing I always ask is, um, what can I do to make it more engaging, more enjoyable, and more supportive for the person that's like by themselves in isolation, where they don't have another artist peer. They don't have a life drawing group. They don't have, a family of artists and craftspeople,
Yeah.
like I'm very lucky. I come from a family where no one tried to say like don't go into art, right? Everyone was always like, "Oh, he's an artist. He's going to figure that out," right?
Wow. I was going to
Um
ask you about
but
that,
I'm
but I'm glad you
I'm
offered
really
that.
lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, my father is really into the performing arts, which is great because he, really understood, oh, there's a rich potential there for someone to have a good life and make really wonderful things.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm very, very lucky with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, this community thing, you're spot on too. That is the key. A lot of people ask me, "Do you do one-on-one?" And, I don't believe in one-on-one. I think that they need to be together on some level, maybe not huge classes of 50, but in my case, it's some from 12 to 15.
Right, right.
And, I'm telling you, man,
Yeah.
it's crazy how much we've become an online family. In fact,
Yep.
recently, it was probably about a year ago, maybe not quite that long ago. I was thinking, I've never done a workshop in my own studio. Well, I have, but it's been like 15 years. So
Oh
maybe
wow.
maybe I'll finally do a workshop in my own studio. Maybe I'll do that. And I was considering it. I mentioned it to my online students, but I said, "Guys, you have me every day. Like you can message me daily. I see you every Friday. Don't sign up. But I'm only telling you because as a friend and your mentor, I would feel guilty not telling you before I tell the public, right? To at least
Right.
because if you were
That's
dying to
part of the
come,
deal. Like,
yeah, if you're
yeah.
dying to come, gosh, even though I think you're crazy because you don't need to come, you have me all the time. Then I at least want to tell you. And I was very transparent about it. The entire workshop filled up
Yep.
with them. The entire workshop.
Oh, it's amazing.
So what I did was I said, you know what, guys, I
That's the best
procrast.
case.
It is, except I procrastinate and procrastinate because I can't take their money. They're already paying me tuition for the online thing. And so what I did was I'm like, you know what? We're not going to do a workshop. I have 50 students, but I want I only want 10 of them to come because I don't have a big enough studio. So I took the 10 who have been
Sure.
here the longest and
Yep.
who had signed up and also been here the longest. And I said, okay, this year, no one has to pay. You just got to get here and we'll just hang out for 4 days. We'll go to museums, we'll plein air paint, we'll hire a model. I'll answer any questions you want. I'll give you a tour of the studio. I'll tell you anything you want to know for 4 days, free of charge. And dude, I'm telling you, I'm more excited than they are. I can't wait for them to show up. I'm like, it's going to be a
I was
blast.
gonna say that sounds phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be so fun.
And it's just like what we were saying earlier with my studio practice where it's
Yeah.
like everyone that's involved, we know each other. We've been around a long time. Everyone's been vetted. And so every week on Wednesday nights, we do the figure drawing. And I cannot tell you how guilty I feel when I miss it, but also how excited I am all day leading up to it, where I'm like, I
Yeah.
cannot wait to talk about this with these people. I can't wait to get their take on it. I want to show this sketch to Leah, and such a great thing to have that crew. So that's
Yeah, you're with your
fantastic.
people. You're with your people. It's
Yeah.
you haven't been to the Porch
Absolutely.
Society, have you? The Porch Society of America?
Not yet. I would love to go because I'm obsessed with portraiture and portrait
You gotta
structure.
come, man. It's in DC
I
next
would
year.
love.
You wanna
Okay,
talk
that's
about
not fun.
yeah, you wanna talk about being with your people. I get
Yeah,
painfully depressed when I come home from the Porch Society. That's the one reason I don't like it, because when I get home,
yeah,
I'm on it's like coming off of a crack high or something. I've never been on crack, but I can imagine it's pretty good. But I'm like, it's like, you're just on a high for 4 days straight, and then I come
yeah,
home and I'm like, now I'm now I'm back to the grind. I mean, I love painting, don't get me
yeah.
wrong, but you're with
Gotta
your
shift
people.
gears.
That's the point. You're with your
Yeah,
people for 4 days straight, and you'll spend all night in the bar talking about art and just, like, catching
yep.
up with old friends. And it
It's
doesn't and the new
wonderful.
people just get sucked right into it, you know? It's not like it's clicky or anything. So every year
Yeah,
it's the old group and more people, more, the group just gets better and better and bigger and bigger. So,
yeah,
anyway, it's the same. It's whether it's in your studio with your greatest art friends or your students who you love or your people at a conference and friends who you care about at a conference. Dude, it's just great to be with your people. You do need to come, man. It's really fun. It's a good
I would
time.
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my second mentor, Dan Thompson. Do you know Dan?
I met him one time and he's also on my list. You keep naming great artists.
Yeah,
Yeah, that guy can draw. Oof.
he's amazing.
Yeah.
I've been working closely with him for a long time, and yeah, he's fantastic. He works with the Portrait Society often, and
How have I
the
not
port.
met him? I've been there for 12 years straight. Wonder how I haven't met him.
I have no idea.
Really?
I do not know.
Huh. We've
But
been
you
missing each
definitely have
other.
to. Yeah,
But
yeah, man,
the
he's insane.
audience the audience is going to want to see your art eventually. So let's go ahead and do that and go check out your work. So right now, this
Right?
is your website. And
Yeah.
dude, I can't interview Michael Grimaldi and you back to back without wanting to slit my wrists. So thank you for that, by the way.
Well, he was one of my teachers and had a
Sheesh.
profound impact on my understanding of light, form, and structure. So
Yeah, you
that's
guys are
that's that's great.
masters, masters. What you work more with graphite though, right? This is mostly graphite.
I work a lot with graphite. The one your cursor's over right now is silver point.
Oh, you're doing
Um,
silver point? On what kind of a
yeah,
ground?
I love silver. I use all types of ground. That's just on regular prepared paper. Yeah,
Have you ever seen that paper that I think it's by Legion? It might not be. But I got it in a
the
huge
art coded paper.
no, there's one that's like it's in a whole ream and it's like plastic. It's whatever material it is, it
Oh,
goes all the way through and it takes silver point beautifully. Are you familiar with this paper?
well, that paper I don't know, but the art coded paper is the one I know that they make where metal point works perfectly.
Maybe it is that. Does it come in a ream? Like a pretty thick ream?
It doesn't. You have to buy single sheets. You can't just
Okay, no, this is a
grab a
ream.
pen.
I
Okay, well,
gotta
that's
find this
great.
paper.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
anyway, it's pretty wild. It's just like it feels like a sheet of plastic, but it takes silver point for some reason. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, it's cool stuff. But so silver point, what is it about silver point other than I mean, I have my own reasons for liking silver point, but what is it that you're drawn to with the medium?
Well, being told you can't do something with a medium drives me nuts. Like, you can't blend it, you can't lift out, you
Mm-hmm.
can't go beyond a certain value range. And like I take that as a personal challenge to figure out how, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I can blend, I can lift out, I can get it really dark. Um,
How do you get it
and
so dark? Is it the ground or just,
it's the ground, yeah. It's the ground working in layers. Yep.
yeah, you're dark. That's crazy dark.
Yeah. And what happens is then it also will tarnish. And
Yeah, it's starting
one of
to.
the things I yeah, one of the things I love when it comes to Odd Nerdrum's work, his paintings, is how physical they feel. Same with Antonio Lopez Garcia. His drawings even feel physical. So for me, metal point, having something that will tarnish, it reminds me, all right, this is a physical thing I'm making. It's not something in Photoshop or Procreate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's the physical materiality of the medium that's just so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Often people ask me if I use digital mediums, and I have absolutely nothing against them. In fact, some of my favorite artists, like one I just interviewed for
Yeah.
the second time, David Dibble, uses it a ton.
Yeah.
So this is not a jab at all. But for me
No,
personally,
no.
I'm with you 100%. Like, I want to be able to touch. Like, I love the fact that when you're done, you have something that's physical and, and tangible
Yeah.
and real. And I
I
love using, like, feeling the pressure of the tool and all that kind of stuff. Well, everything you said, I just agree in a complete
yeah,
agreement.
I want to build my work. I want to construct it, right?
Yeah.
I want to go get the raw materials. I want to prepare those surfaces. I want to mount it to a cradled board sometimes, right? Um, and and really build a work of art, you know?
Yeah.
Um, now in my more illustrative teaching, we're working with digital tools often, right? Because that's
Mhm.
where the career goes. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's
No,
a
of course not.
beautiful thing. It's great for the business, right?
Yeah.
Um, but when we were talking earlier about that flow state, the physicality of the materials keeps me there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. All right, let's look at more of your work here. This is just a cover page. Okay, actually I'm going to stick with sketches because like
Yeah,
I had said
please.
earlier, sketchbooks are one of those things that are I'm relatively new to considering I'm 50 years old this year.
Oh wow.
I'm finally starting to fill up sketchbooks. I never used to.
That's great.
And you're one of those people that is exceptional with sketchbooks. I have a question for you
Thank you.
about it.
Yeah.
So, what how do you decide what medium to use from day to day? You sit down, you got a few minutes to draw, and you've got options from colored pencil to what looks like watercolor and gouache
Hmm.
to metal point to graphite and mixed media and all this other stuff. Are there certain things about the subject that help you decide what medium is best, or is there a mood thing, or is it like I just haven't used red pencil in a while? Let me do something to red pencil. What motivates your decisions?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about when I teach. Um, if you're using the same materials day in and day out, you run the risk of having them feel commonplace and your performance and your practice not feeling special, right?
Hmm.
And stay reverent about what you do, how you spend your time. I think you need to genuinely love your materials.
Hmm.
And if I'm drawing in graphite all the time, and I draw in graphite every day, but if I spend 5 hours of my day every day only working in graphite, the world feels gray. The world feels dusty, right? Like it
Hmm.
feels like graphite. You start looking at things as if you're going to draw it in graphite. Um, and so I'll switch to the red pencil. And because if I'm working in red pencil, I'm still thinking of light, form, edge, structure, treatment, design, right? Everything with graphite, except now I have chroma.
Hmm.
And it's such a fantastic medium to choose because the darker you go, the brighter it becomes. And I love that. It's such a fun formal challenge. Um,
Hmm.
and then if you're finding a point tool is just becoming commonplace, pick up a big brush, right? And play with a brush, push the water. And anytime I'm working with a brush, I find that I gravitate towards color pencil, watercolor, and it moves me into sculpting with color and looking at, hue, value, chroma, temperature through a different lens. And so the choice in medium, I think, has to do with the creative strategies I'm trying to sort of shake off and ones I'm trying to open back up. And the sketchbook is such a perfect vehicle for that because you can do anything you want, you know? Like
Hmm.
if you look at all these images, the form sense isn't even consistent, right? The formal strategies are varying. The decisions of curation are all over. And your sketchbook is that safe ground to just try stuff out, play, have fun. So
Hmm.
like maybe that head resting on the hand, maybe that turns into a painting sometime, right? But for now, it's a great sketch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's so
not having
interesting. The
that
variation. I love it. Just love it. So what do you carry with you outside of the studio? What mediums
I
do you
have
carry with you?
I have a pencil roll that has a bunch of colored pencils, mechanical pencils, sharpeners, things like that. And then I usually have at least one or two sketchbooks. Yeah.
And what about wet mediums? Do you carry those ever?
No, my students have been trying to get me into those watercolors that come in those really beautiful small little tin sets, and then you get the water brush pen, right?
Yeah.
Um, I find that the marks that makes are too consistent, and so I'm not able to make my own calligraphy with it. The tool asserts itself a little too much for my
Mm.
personal taste, how I use it. And so my mediums usually speak to allowing a wide range of calligraphy, tactile sensibility, and color dynamics.
Hmm. So what do you
Yeah,
got in this? You got watercolor, you got gouache, you got colored
watercolor,
pencil.
color pencil, little bit of gouache, little bit of gesso.
That's
Yeah.
great. And then one thing I've noticed about your work is you take a lot of liberties with color. And,
Oh
like
yeah,
for example,
got
when you did this face over here, you do some really fun stuff with just simplifying color. And I mean, we all know that principle that the value is what truly matters in creating form, more than color, at least. And yeah, you're really pushing that principle.
Well, there's that to a degree. But the one thing that Vincent Desiderio really opened me up to, same with JP Roy, who's a phenomenal painter. You should look into him too.
Okay.
He they both opened me up to the idea that color temperature could also be as critical to the read of a work as value. And
Hmm.
so I've started to organize my images not only tonally to get a profound effect, but to also think about the effect of temperature itself in the design, and to treat that as critical as tone.
You know what, though? I'm not disagreeing with you at all, but I
Yeah,
find the
please.
color conversation really interesting
Yeah,
because there's a lot of semantics involved. Because color
yeah.
temperature almost seems like an oxymoron. I mean, there's only three colors: red, blue, and yellow. I mean, technically speaking, when you're mixing colors, you really only got to pay attention to three colors: red, blue, and yellow. Well, that's cold, medium, and warm, right? So color is temperature. Temperature is color. So, I mean, it's just an interesting thing to think about. It's like, what there is there really a difference between color temperature and color?
I think there is. I think zones of temperature, warm light, cool shadows, you know?
Right.
Cool light, warm shadows. If you turn a spotlight on, and then you have an indirect exterior light coming through, you got that warm and cool shift, right? You
No,
gotta
no, no. I
understand,
understand what
I'm
you're saying. It's
coming
just, but you could define it
yeah,
like this: blue lights,
yeah,
orange shadows, or orange lights, blue
sure,
shadows, and it's kind of like saying the same thing, but not exactly. Like I said, it's almost semantics. You know,
yeah,
I think temperature is a better way of doing it because temperature, or speaking of it, because temperature, speaking in terms of temperature implies subtlety, and I think subtlety is really important because if you
so it's
speak in terms
huge.
of color, then the layperson will be like, okay, well, if you're saying blue, then you mean primary blue. If you're saying red, then you mean primary
Mm,
red. And when we speak in terms of temperature, then it makes it easier to get the point across. Well, yeah, technically when I say temperature, I mean leaning toward red and orange, or warm. I mean we're leaning toward red and orange. But if I say red and orange, then you'll paint it red and orange instead of, or red
mhm,
and
mhm.
yellow, I mean. And but by saying warm, then it can still be blue, but it's a warm blue now.
Yeah.
So it's just got a touch of red and yellow in it, right? But it's still blue.
Yeah, or that gorgeous, what I call earth blue, which is that optical cool gray from like ivory black, titanium white. Like that's a great warm blue if you have other blues on your palette, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun too.
You know, it was funny. This makes me think of a conversation I had with my son yesterday. On Saturday mornings, he and I either do archery or we go shooting, and
That's great.
it's kind of our thing. And so yesterday we went shooting, and I have a few pistols, and he's like, "What pistol am I going to shoot today?" And I said, "Well, it's up to you, but you can either shoot the green one, or because he doesn't remember the names of the guns, so I'm like, you can either shoot the
Yeah, yeah.
green one or the black one or the beige one or whatever." And he goes, "What green one?" And I said, "The green one. It's the." I'm like I'm like, it's the," and again, he doesn't know the name, so I'm trying to tell him it's like it's the SIG Legion 229. He's like, "I don't know what that is." Like, "Okay, it's the
Right.
green one." He's like, "You don't have a green gun, Dad." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, why is my kid arguing with me about color?" I said, Cole, do you know what I do for a living?" And so we get to the studio and he's still just being a 17-year-old. "Dad, you don't even know what green is. Dad, it's not green." So I pull out the gun and I'm holding it in front of him and I'm like, of course it's not loaded. And I'm
Right.
like, "Dude, that's green." He goes, "It's gray. That's gray." And I'm like, Well, obviously it's not like bright green. It's not, it's not
That's amazing.
right. It's not literally 100% just simple green, secondary color green."
Yeah.
I said, then I held it next to black that was on the table in my studio. And he goes, "Oh, I guess it is green." I was like, "Thanks,
That's
Cole.
amazing.
Thanks for having faith in your dad." And it's a very subtle
Well,
green because it's really a gray that has more green or
yeah.
more blue and yellow than it has red. And that's, I
What's
think,
so
why we need the
funny
temperature conversation, because people, they need to see green to call it green. They need to see like a grass green to call it green. But if we speak in terms of temperature, we can talk
yeah,
about the subtleties, right?
yeah. One of my favorite things to do to lead into that conversation is to use the Zorn palette, right?
Yeah.
To mix green from yellow and black,
Isn't
and
that wild how
to
green
get
that is?
people to see. Yeah, it's a gorgeous green, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I always set up a still life as a midterm test for my undergraduates with a dark yellow shadow, and I see like who is listening or who's going to end up with a bright green shadow, you know? Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah, because they're thinking,
what's
well, you add
crazy
black to
is
yellow and it'll make it darker. That's which
exactly,
it makes sense if
exactly.
you're untrained.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
makes perfect sense, but it's not gonna
Um,
work.
the temperature conversation is an endlessly fascinating one because I think the modern human that lives indoors with different temperature lighting can appreciate it maybe more.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe feels it on a different level than previous. And I think a
That's a
lot
good
about
point.
color with language, and green is one of the last colors that gets named,
Hmm.
which is wild. Even though we see the most range of green naturally,
Wait, wait,
right?
wait, wait. What do you mean by that? It's the last color defined in our language? Like the last word made to describe
It's not
color?
the very last one, but it's not on the front end, which is
No
wild because you
kidding.
think it would be, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
because we associate it with ripeness, right? In the wild, or freshness, or living, and those terms usually take over,
Unless
right?
it's on a
Uh,
person, then it's death.
then it's not so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, but there's light, there's dark, and then the first color that gets named is red. Is it- Isn't that wild?
Red is so not well, maybe it makes sense because red is an outlier. So it
Red
would be
earth,
the
red
one thing
clay.
that, like you see all this green and then a red berry and in this huge,
Yeah,
vast green
yeah.
forest and then a tiny red berry. So
Mm.
maybe the colors were assigned to the things that were different before the things that were common.
And what's amazing is every culture, every developed language goes through essentially the same sequence.
No kidding. That's wild. Where'd you learn
It's
this stuff?
amazing, isn't it? I love language,
Yeah.
and one of my philosophies of teaching is if I give language to a concept, I can reframe it for people, right?
Mhm.
Just like the idea of metaphor, you know?
Yeah.
And there's a book called Through the Looking Glass of Color, I think, where they talk a lot about that. I'll find the link
Send
for
that
you.
link to me too. Yeah, we got to remember all this stuff.
Yeah,
You're giving me a lot of good
I
stuff.
know.
So far, we got that book, we got your website, we got your school.
Yep,
Okay, so we got to
yep.
remember that. All right, and then this website, you got to send me this too because it's some for those who can't see the address, which I guess is everybody. It's very obscure address. It makes absolutely no sense. So we're gonna have to
Yeah,
post
that
that.
that
Yeah,
will be changed. It's not a thing. Yeah,
yeah. I'll just say it now, just in case we don't get it.
I'll send it to you.
TWSTDSYSTM. Okay.
It's
It's
not gonna make any sense.
yeah, no, it's not. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. All right, let's move away from the sketchbook, even though I could talk about that for hours. Um,
Yeah, sure.
yeah. Wait, do you have more works than these three? Because we looked at these three.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, there's more. Okay. For some reason I couldn't scroll. Whoa, that looks so good. I
thank you.
love your when I hatch, I tend to hatch in straight lines. I love
Hmm.
how you hatch in curves. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
might I might I might borrow that a little bit and play around with that.
Yeah,
But
please. I
it's beautiful.
I think a lot about optical ways of depicting form and tactile ways. And I'm constantly going back and forth within that spectrum, trying to sculpt the form, but also get that light, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so being able to carve out my lights with curvilinear hatching, or planar hatching, changed the way I think about the world. It
Mm.
it just changed everything.
Did
Yeah.
you ever see that or hear anything about that painting they found that they assumed was Da Vinci, or it was like a page in a book or something? They claimed it was by Da Vinci. This was maybe 10 years ago. Are you familiar with this?
Okay.
No?
Uh,
Anyway,
not a page from a book.
I might be getting the details wrong, but it really doesn't matter to make my point. But one of the things I'm ambidextrous, but I draw mostly with my left hand. I paint with both, but I draw mostly with my left
Oh,
hand.
cool.
And so I and I make marks like you do in both directions because you have to.
Yeah,
Like
same.
you can't just make marks in one direction all the time just because you're like if you're left-handed, you go from upper right to lower left or vice versa. You know what I mean? I guess if I would go from upper left
Yeah.
to lower right as a lefty, according to them, what they said was Da Vinci was left-handed, and because this drawing has hatch marks that go from the upper right to the lower left, it must be his. And I'm like, oh my
And
gosh,
every
historians, you
single
got to be kidding
draftsman
me.
went, "Yeah, that's not how that works." Like,
Exactly, exactly. The whole time I'm
we
thinking, you guys get a real artist in there to help you figure this out. You
yeah,
know?
we know he was left-handed because of the mirror script. That's how, because if you were left-handed during his era, they taught you that.
Right.
That's not an invention from him. Every
I didn't know
left-handed
that.
person that could read or write was taught mirror script so they wouldn't smudge their ink. Yeah.
Oh, that's the worst being lefty because I write lefty too. And it's like, yeah, that's
Yep.
the worst. You got to do with the hook hand
Smudge
so you
city,
don't,
right?
the hook, the ugly hook, so you can read what you're writing. Well,
Yep.
yeah. Well, besides the fact that I didn't even know how they knew he was left-handed. I just gave him the benefit of the doubt. But the fact that they think that they can pin it on him because of the direction of the hatching is hilarious.
I know. It's
But
so silly.
but I'm looking at
One of
yours
the
and I'm
first
like,
things
it goes complete every direction under the sun. If I got in here with calipers, I don't think you've missed a single degree from 1 to 360 on this drawing.
Yeah, I really like to sculpt the whole form.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great. It's great.
it's a blast.
Yeah. All right,
Thank
let's
you.
see what else you got. Do you have well, I want to ask you about that actually. Do you have some sort of a muscle head or something in your studio or
Oh yeah, yeah. I
okay.
have a ton of the
s-
crochet heads.
So this
So
is
yeah,
an
that
this
was
is an
the
observational
like,
drawing.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What now?
Same with that glove.
What
That
the
was
heck?
observational. Yeah,
What the heck? Okay, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Michael Grimaldi.
sure.
Why? Okay, why would you draw a glove? And please understand, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I wish I drew the glove, but I never would have drawn the glove because I don't have the same foresight that you do that you can make a glove a piece of art. And I said that to him because he drew a sink and
Yeah.
checkered tile floor. And
Yep.
I'm like, Uh, yeah, that would not have interested me at all. I would have never thought of that as art, an art subject. And you did the same thing with the glove. That's the most beautiful drawing of a glove.
Is it just me or the rest of you guys also get weirdly excited when you order new paint? Because I don't know about you, but when I get paint in the mail, it feels like Santa just dropped my Christmas presents off at my doorstep. With Vasari paint, my paint of choice and the podcast sponsor, it's even more exciting. And let me show you why. Because when Vasari shows up, it comes in this incredible box where each tube lays in this little compartment perfectly formed around the tube in this nice soft foam. And it's surrounded by velvet, red velvet. Now you got to ask yourself, if a paint comes so carefully protected and surrounded by red velvet, you got to wonder if this paint is worthy of royalty. It is. Vasari is. So if you haven't tried Vasari, you're seriously missing out. And the thing about Vasari, it's not only the best paint out there, it's also made by an incredible company that's been around for 30 years and knows its customer by name. Do yourself a favor, go to vasaricolors.com and order yourself some for your next painting.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was hanging out with my really great friend Tina, and she was cleaning her bedroom, and I happened to see this glove, and it didn't have a partner with it, and I was like, "Is it cool if I just hang on to this for a second?" And I ended up just sitting down for 6 hours, and it's all hatches. It's all just building up and stacking strokes with a mechanical pencil,
That's graphite?
and yeah, it's graphite,
Dang, you really built that
and
up.
it was a blast. And there was something about the soft but empty compressed form that I just really dug how that looked, and I loved how hand-like it was, but none of my tricks with hands would work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it felt like this weird otherworldly thing that, because I'll draw hands all day from my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
I teach this stuff, that's easy. But this, I had to look close and I had to be surprised by what I saw, and it was endlessly fascinating. But it was also very meditative.
I would
So it was
predict if I
right
were going to
close.
start a drawing like this that
Yeah.
I wouldn't see the fruits of my labors till the last half hour of a 6-hour session. Because I would
You know
think
what's funny is Well,
What's
I get that often when people say that, and it hit me that I think I am more prone to being process oriented than goal oriented. I
hmm.
love the labor, the meditation, that ritual time, that flow state. If it turns out, great. If it doesn't, fine. Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad I said it that way and that you actually well, probably because I'm not speaking very clearly, but I'm glad you misunderstood that because I appreciate that comment. But what I actually
Sure.
meant to say was by not seeing the fruits of my labor till the last half hours, because this subject is so close in value, I would think
Yeah.
that it would be 5.5 hours of legwork before you finally got to that point where you could start to really see the form. You know, if it's a simple thing, Rembrandt lighting head, first 10 minutes, you've got form,
Yep.
right? All you
Done.
got to do,
Easy.
two sides,
Easy.
light side,
Egg.
dark side, core shadow, form, boom.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
the rest is just icing on the cake. But with this,
Absolutely.
I feel like you're not really going to start to see the form till the last half hour of a 6 hour session. Am I wrong about that?
There's definitely something about drawing into anticipation, and the more that we work, the more we can envision where it's headed,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so maybe that was there. It helps too though that I had the glove right next to the glove on the page. So like
Oh, so it's kind of like a
it was
sight size
essentially
thing.
doing a like a trompe l'oeil thing.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool.
and so it wasn't like let me set this up and back off 6 feet. It was I'm physically holding this squishy glove, right? Yeah.
Oh, I
It
wanna
was
try
it
something
was
like
a
that.
blast.
That's fun. See, lately,
The,
I never used to work from photography. I was strictly from life for 14 years, and now that I've sort of decided that it's okay, I'm gonna start working from photography, I need to be more productive is really what it comes down to.
yeah, sure.
And, so I'll find myself just staring at my phone, but instead of just when I'm
Mm,
sketching in church or I'm sketching in a doctor's office or getting my tires rotated or whatever, but that's what
yeah.
I need to do is just pick up something, sketch one of my pencils or sketch my pencil pouch or sketch my instead of pulling out my phone all the time. I think that's way better.
Yeah, it's a really fun thing, and you become driven by the little surprises, like the weird stitching pattern that you never noticed, right? Or
Yeah.
the depth between where the opening of the glove is and the back of the glove, like things that you just don't care about or think of until you draw it, right?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
I,
That's
I will say
beautiful.
it's one of my favorite drawings, and it lives in a collection that I'm very proud of. One of my favorite art students did buy it.
No cool.
I've
No
tried to
way.
reproduce it, but it reproduces horribly because the values are so tight.
It looks pretty
So
dang
it's one
good.
of
So it must
the,
be even better in person, but it looks pretty beautiful
it
here.
looks good on the website, but in like printed form, not so
Oh,
much.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Man, I that's interesting. Were you surprised that I stopped on this one? I mean, it's one of your favorites,
Um,
but it's
yeah,
also
it's one of my favorites.
yeah, it stopped me in my tracks too. But if someone said, my
Yeah.
wife, I go home from work and my wife's like, so what was your favorite work that he did? And I said to her, oh, it was just a glove in the middle of a white
Yeah,
page. And she'd be like,
I love it.
seriously? Seriously? That's what it is? But you know what?
That's great.
If you do it right, doesn't matter what you paint, you know? This is cool. No,
Yeah,
so
I
this
mean,
reminds me oh shoot, your idol, Tonio Lopez Garcia.
yeah. He was my influence there. I was doing a residency through the Art Students League,
Mhm.
um, at their Vitlachill campus, which just had all this beautiful foliage. I showed up to the residency with a ton of anatomical specimens in my trunk, and I was like, okay. I pulled out rib cages, skulls, like all that stuff. I was like, this is what I'm doing for a month. And then I walked outside, and it was landscaping that hadn't been manicured in a way that was for display. Like it was just wild natural nature right outside my door, and I was like, well, that's organic and beautiful and rhythmic. Why am I not drawing this? You know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I left all the specimens inside and I went out. And so this drawing took me about a week and it was all measured and
Get
built
out of
up.
town.
And yeah, it was all measured. And that doesn't matter at all to the finished work. It doesn't make it better. But for me, it was a really in-depth, like I'm really here doing it kind of thing, you
Oh,
know?
you were
And
inspired by Antonio Lopez Garcia. That's totally how he is.
yeah.
At least that's what I
Oh yeah.
understand. Wow.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's very abstract. I mean, it works as just an abstract painting or I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah,
drawing.
the formalism is something I really love, and it's I appreciate when people don't pay it a lot of attention in art history because they're caught up in what they want to focus on, you know,
Mhm.
like the
Mhm.
portraiture or the figure. Um, but I found it to be such a wonderful way of bringing a sense of play into my work and never being bored. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, how can I make this fascinating or strange or fun or playful? Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about the background. Are you smudging with your hand with rags? Are you using wet media at all to get some of these
All of it.
textures? You're using wet
All
media
of it.
too?
Yeah.
What is it, like
Wet brush,
water
dry
charcoal
brush.
or water graphite?
No, no, it's just graphite. I really love Mitsubishi HEIN pencils. I
Oh,
think
not
they're the
familiar.
greatest graphite pencils that are being made right now. The graphite is perfect. They're a perfect pencil. And
What is it about it?
uh,
Is it just soft or something? Or
well, so
smooth?
it yeah, it's very velvety because they're combination of hyper refined graphite mixed with very refined and high quality clay, and then also wax, a little bit of wax.
Are they
And it is
wood pencils?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, bummer. I love
The
using
wood
lead
is also
holders.
great. Oh, they're fantastic too. You can get them in lead holder pencil sets.
You
Yeah.
can buy just the lead from them.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I've actually
Okay,
made
another
my own
link.
wood pencils from those. Yeah.
Nope.
Sure.
Wait. You made your own wood pencil?
Yeah, yeah.
How the heck do you do that?
Yeah, get 2 pieces of wood, carve out a little trough, smush it, and then shave it down, right?
Oh, you glue two halves together around the pencil.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't
just like
know.
how they used to make it.
I
Yep.
didn't know that's how they did it. I always wondered how they did it. That makes
Oh, yeah.
sense. So you'd have to
Yeah,
have
it's
some pretty
amazing.
perfect troughs for it to fit right.
Yeah, as long as it's close, you fill it with some wood dust and wood glue, right?
Yeah,
It's just like
that's true.
everything else.
That's true.
Just hide all those crimes. They're inside the, pencil, right?
This is great drawing. I should show this to my students. We have a couple of assignments related to structure of the head or just drawing in
Yeah,
terms of
thank you.
structure in general. And a lot of students
Yeah.
struggle with this concept. There's
Yeah,
yeah.
I was incredibly fortunate that in grad school, I found myself in Dan Thompson's drawing class at the NYAA, and a lot of this is very influenced from him. There's stuff that I might do a little differently now, but what you're seeing here, I think, is one of the first big leaps in my work from feeling out the sculptural form and feeling out the conceptual idea of that form. Um, and it's all coming mostly from him.
Yeah. I
So
can
he
definitely
was a
see that.
big influence on me. Yeah, really great.
You do a lot of hatching with your eraser too, I can see.
Tons,
You're doing a
tons.
kneaded eraser or one of those like zero mono zero?
No, I actually, I would love if they would finally sponsor me. I have to reach out to them somehow. Maybe you might have a tip, but Generals now is in production of something called the Factus BM2. It's a mechanical uh, white vinyl eraser. So it's like the Tombow Mono Zero, but it's a little thicker. And in my
Okay.
opinion, it's a lot more durable. And you can sharpen it with a razor blade too to get any fine lines, right?
Mm.
Yeah,
That's
that
great.
drawing tool changed my life. If you want to hear a quick kind of crazy story,
Yeah.
when I was in undergrad, a student of Jeff's, because I hadn't yet met Jeff Geib, a student of his showed me that tool, and it used to be made by Papermate, and it used to be called Tough Stuff, TUFF stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell in love with it. I've been using it ever since. And then all of a sudden, and Jeff Geib and I be, became friends. We're very close, share a studio. Um, he couldn't find it in stores. I couldn't find it in stores. And we're giving these things out to our students like candy, right? We're like, try this, it'll change your life. I'll buy another one. No worries. All of a sudden you can't find them.
No, no.
And so, as we know, art materials get bought and sold all the time from companies. So I didn't know that. This was my first time having my favorite thing get sold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I freaked out. I went to every art store within maybe a 50-mile region and bought out all of their refills.
Go you, man.
No joke, like $800 worth of refills for an eraser. And because I was like, they're gonna stop making it. I'm gonna have to shape them down myself to fit it in. Um, and it turns out they just sold that product, and so now it's made by General Pencil Company. You can buy it almost anywhere,
Hmm.
and it is fantastic.
Do
And
did
now
they
I have a ton
change
of
the
refills.
size so that now all the
No,
reloads you've got don't work? They didn't?
nope,
Good.
it's the same thing. They must have sold the mold and everything. It's the same tool.
Yeah. Oh man. I did the same
Crazy, right?
thing. I did the same thing with Kremnitz White when Windsor Newton
Oh
stopped
yeah,
making that. I went and bought all the Kremnitz
yes,
White within probably 50 miles of Salt Lake. It was
you
bad.
have to.
And I started
Yeah.
ordering it online. I'm like doing everything. And then I ended up finding a different paint I liked anyway. But I don't think I ever even used it
Yeah.
all. But I don't even use
Well,
it anymore.
the thing with anything that's recipe based.
I just have to take a minute to thank each one of my generous patrons for your part in keeping this podcast going. I could not continue to do it without you, so thank you so much. If you're not a patron yet, but you love the show and you listen regularly, please consider becoming a patron. It's really easy to do and it doesn't have to break the bank. Just head over to theundrapedartist.com and click on the link Be My Patron on Podbean. And then choose a monthly donation amount that fits your budget. It's that simple. And to thank you for your generous donations, once you've reached $100 in total contributions, send me an email to theundrapedartist@gmail.com and I will send you one of our spectacular Undraped Artist aprons.
Right? When it gets sold to another company, they're not using the same manufacturer of that recipe. They're using their own products. They're using their own glue. They're using their own pigments, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, if the Kremnitz White from Windsor Newton was sold to like Williamsburg or Old Holland or whatever, right? They're not using the same breakdown. They're just gonna get something that feels kind of like a color match
I
so they don't
know.
have to
That was
call
my
it something
worry.
else, right?
Yeah.
And then it sucks. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like it's too runny. It's not like the thing with Kremnitz White is how beautifully sculptural that paint is, right?
Mm-hmm. It had the
The way it
perfect
drags on
consistency.
the surface. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so good.
it
Now,
is.
do do you put that on the front end of a painting or the end?
I don't use it
Like
anymore.
which part
Yeah.
of the painting?
Well, when I was using Kremnitz White, I was just using it
Yeah.
from beginning to end. I used it all the time. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah, but now I use titanium again. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I don't know if you noticed, but I touch my face a lot. So it's just a habit of
Oh,
mine.
Kremnitz White's not good for that.
No, no. And so
No.
what I started noticing, my eyes would burn sometimes during the day, and
Yeah.
realized was because I was getting paint in my eyes. And just
Ah,
minute microscopic amounts. I mean, but it's enough to make them burn. And you're as
yeah.
far as I understand, your eyes are really absorbent of contaminants. So,
Very,
and not
yeah.
to mention, I might rub my nose, just whatever. And
Sure.
my mouth, I touch my mouth. So I was just like, I have got to stop using this.
I'm not against it, but for a guy like me who has a habit of touching his face, it's not a good choice. So
Well,
I
so
started using titanium again.
I use titanium white for most of my painting, and I teach that to my students. I'll switch to Kremnitz white or some other like flake variant towards the end for that sculptural punch.
Yeah.
I just really love that.
The problem
So
is that
if you don't mind,
titanium dries fast or slower. So that
right?
concerns me a little bit using titanium underneath and then the fast drying white on top, but I don't know, it's probably not a big deal. But
Yeah,
I have
it's a little tricky.
yeah, it's tricky.
So all right, so you made that adjustment. What's your medium? Because you
Um
probably cut the solvents too.
I got irritant induced asthma from solvents many years before that because I was in
Uh,
a studio not too dissimilar to yours where I rented the whole building and then I
sure.
subleased out studios to other artists. But this one artist who was a buddy of mine, he would I was a full-time working artist at the time. He was still he had a day job and work at night in the studio and he would leave
Hmm.
turpentine, not even mineral spirits, but turpentine open in a giant coffee can all night long
Oh,
and all day long.
that's horrifying.
Never cover it. And I didn't know this was happening. And we shared the same HVC,
So you're
whatever.
just breathing that
I'm
in.
breathing this crap all day long while he's at work and nothing's happening to him. And
Oh
I'm the only
man.
full time artist. So I started getting sick and I started not being able to breathe. And kept going to doctors. And finally, we discovered what it was. And I was scared out of my mind. I was going to have to stop painting. So what I
Yeah,
did was I stopped using solvents altogether for I don't remember how many years, at least 5 years. And I just started
sure.
like using linseed oil to clean my brushes and uh, and just wiping them clean a lot instead of solvent. But then
Yeah.
eventually I invented this thing where I can wave my hand over it and the door opens and I can clean my brushes and it closes right back up. And so
Oh,
it's a motion sensor thing. And so
that's cool.
I took a chance and I started using solvents again with this device. And I've been using it for 10 years and I breathe beautifully. So it's done the trick.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, but
That's so
it was
fascinating.
rough for a while. Yeah. So no, so yes,
Yeah,
I do use solvents, but mediums, I use all kinds of mediums from Galkid to Neomagilp to I use that traditional mix of Damar varnish, mineral spirits, and linseed oil. But it's sold by I'm drawing a blank. I'm so bad with my memory. It's sold by Edge Pro Gear and it's called
okay.
Prohibition Medium. I like that one too.
Sure.
But I can only
Yeah.
use that. I can only use that. That one's really toxic. So I use that
Yeah.
sparingly. But that's basically it. So why do you ask
That's
about the
cool.
mediums? I'm curious.
Well, so I just started my semester, right? And I'm
Hmm.
teaching a bunch of young artists how to oil paint for the first time, and they are petrified of all the chemistry.
Oh,
And so I'm teaching them lean. I'm teaching them how to clean their brushes at home and work safely with pets and all that stuff. And we stick to one medium the whole time just to keep it easy for them.
what medium is that?
Just to build. I use linseed stand oil and I cut it 1 to 1 with Gamsol.
Okay, that's gonna
Yeah,
dry really
it's
slow.
it. What I found was it dries as at the same speed as just my regular oil paints from Windsor and Newton, which is great.
Oh, well, it must
Um,
be the cutting it because stand oil alone, man, that could take like a month.
oh yeah, no,
That's the worst.
I remember making a painting, a Rembrandt master copy when I was in undergrad, and I used stand oil because I was like, this is gonna get me that effect, right?
It's probably still
And
wet.
then I woke up the next day and half the face had moved down.
Oh no.
I was like, what is
Oh
going on?
man. I did a painting with stand oil once, and I think 6 months later, it was still like things were still sticking to it. It just
Oh, it's wild.
it stays sticky forever. Sand oil is what I've
Well,
noticed. But when
one
you,
of
I
the
guess
things
that formula
I
works.
yeah, if you cut it 1 to 1, you get the benefit of it having been cooked, and so it's not going to yellow as much over time like regular linseed oil.
Mm,
Um, and then yeah, it's very workable. It no longer feels like honey or anything like that. Yeah, that's great.
man, yeah, that's wild. Well, we've been at this, man, almost 3 hours, dude. You're an interesting guy to talk to, and I want to look at more of your work,
Oh,
but
thanks, man.
I'm gonna keep you here all night. But let me just pan through a couple more for my own sake
Sure.
and for the audience's sake. Oh man, that's so cool. Yeah, I've got to take sketchbooking more seriously. I know these aren't sketchbook things, but they're inspiring me to be a sketchbook artist.
Awesome. Thank you.
Gosh, dude. All right, tell me real quick. Again, you're using water here with what?
Yeah, well, so I'll work up the graphite surface, and then I'm working on a hot press watercolor paper from Arches. It's my
Okay.
favorite drawing paper. I love the sizing, and so all I'm doing is taking a wet brush and going into the graphite that's already there,
It moves it?
and then I move it somewhere else. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know it worked like that. I never tried it.
yeah.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah, I had no idea that you could do wash with graphite, and manipulate the dirt that's already on the
I didn't
surface
know that
until I
either.
saw Jeff Dye do that, and I was like, and once you hear it, you're like, well, obviously that would work. Why didn't I think of that? And it's this weird rule of drawing versus painting, like the pencil versus the brush and things like that, right? Where it's like, well, someone had to tell me I could lift out to add information in too, you know? Like
Yeah.
at first I always thought like, oh, I lift out and I get rid of all the problems, you know?
Are you
But yeah,
familiar with
that's great.
I interviewed him, Thomas, I never get his name right. I think it's CIAN. Um C is it
Are you
CIAN?
thinking Oliver?
No, this guy. Yeah, I got it right. I got it right. I'm not that stupid. Okay. Thomas Kane.
Oh,
Dude,
that's really beautiful.
you familiar with this guy?
No.
Talk about mixing water medium with graphite and
Oh,
stuff.
look at that. That's great.
He's hardcore, man. I interviewed him a while back. He's Italian. Really great guy
That's really
too.
cool.
But
Also, the first drawing he has there, in the Moleskine sketchbook where he's going over the fold. I love when people cross that
yeah, isn't that
fold.
cool?
It's so rare to see people do it, and
Yeah.
I push everybody to try it because it takes your it takes your page and makes it a composition, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's
It really adds a lot of interest. Anyway, not to promote other artists on your podcast, but I thought you might like his work
no, no, please. Love it.
because he's also a great draftsman. Now, this guy, I've seen him before. Did you do a portrait of him at some other university where other people have drawn him?
No, so this was a workshop drawing. There's a handful of people that I are on my bucket list to go and study under, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anytime they do a workshop, if I can make it happen, I really try. So this was from a Colleen Berry workshop.
Oh, of course.
She's a
She's
phenomenal
phenomenal.
drafts person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just next level. And so this was a very prominent model at the school.
That's right. Yeah. I thought it might be Grand Central
Yeah,
Academy. That's what you're talking about, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, that skull's insane, dude. Oh,
Thanks.
that is
That
so
was a life-changing
awesome.
drawing. That was my last year of grad school where everything started to click because when I went to the academy, I felt like I wasn't good enough or I didn't fit in. Like I had drawing chops that were great for my undergrad, right? Where everyone was like, "Oh, he's the draftsman," you know.
Mhm.
But when I went to New York, I was feeling like, did they make a mistake by letting me in here? What? And it took about a year and a half for everything to click. And it was because I was studying with such amazing people all at the same time in a program that gave me that breathability. And
It's
so this was
incredible.
a 2 session drawing. I took the skull, put it down, hung out just by myself with the casts and my skull. and I'm really thrilled with it. Yeah, it's sold immediately, and I
Yeah, I
don't know
bet.
who has it.
I would
So it's
kill to
somewhere.
own that. I would kill to own that. That
It's
is
somewhere.
gorgeous.
Well, thank you very
Just
much.
gorgeous. Man. Yeah, we've got a few of these skulls laying around the studio. That's gorgeous as well.
I love boar skulls. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
wonderful shapes.
Man, this has been fun. All right. So one of these days I got to get you to
Absolutely.
come back. I'm doing a new series that I'm excited about where I invite back
Yeah,
three artists to talk about a particular topic. So one of these days I want to invite you back to do that if you'd be open to it. I think you'd be a great
I would
candidate for
love it.
that. Yeah, that'd be
I
fun.
would love it. That'd be great. I love doing panel talks and things like that. Yeah,
Yeah, they're so interesting. Everyone's got a different take on things and it's a blast to talk about it. But
yeah.
if you've heard the podcast before, you know my final question, and that is, what piece of advice could you offer an aspiring artist that you wish you had or that you did have that really helped you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's such a great question, and I try to get at that with people that I interview, that I talk to, by asking them something maybe a little bit more mean,
Mm-hmm.
which is, what was the hardest thing for you to unlearn, right?
Hmm. That's good.
And so that's how I'm going to answer it, because I'm still learning so much, and the world is changing so much, that I feel like I might be on the border of relatability to really young folks coming up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm gonna say the biggest pitfall for me had to do with procedure. I felt like I had to get a perfect block in, and then I had to move into three values. Then I had to move into the next phase, right? And if I didn't do the procedure just right, if I didn't get my order just right, the work was not a legitimate thing, or I lucked into my success or anything like that. And the best advice I have for someone in that respect is, learn everything you can, and then just use the tools you need to use when they're useful, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you need to reassert your block in after 30 hours and you've already been rendering, or already modeled form but it's not right, do it. Go from step 1 to step 10 to step 7 to step 20, back to 3. There's no rules, right? And if you're a student who's shooting for consistency over insight, you're not going to grow as quickly as you could be.
Yeah, that's that's great advice. And after 100 and I think you're 106, I don't think that's a kind of unbelievable that I haven't heard that one before. That's
Oh,
remarkable.
wow. Well,
Yeah.
hey, great.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one because
Awesome.
there's so much great advice out there that's worth repeating. But
Yeah,
eventually you've heard it all. I can't that's a new one. I like that. That's really good advice.
awesome. Very cool.
Well, thanks man. Seriously, another bucket list interview. It's great to know you and thanks a ton for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I love your podcast, love your work. So this is a real thrill. Thank you.
Thanks man. Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.